Do you ever have that one movie that you yourself have seen probably a million times, but you've never actually shown like your friends? Like something that you've watched over and over again, you know every line of dialogue, you know beat by beat, but for some reason your friends just haven't seen it yet? Well, tonight I had that moment with Creepshow, a movie that I've been very, very excited to show Kim because she had actually never seen it before, and I know she is an enormous Stephen King fan. Between the two of us, we've seen a good number of Stephen King films. Kim, what are some of your favorite Stephen King titles?
One of the ones that I really like would have to be The It, Pet Sematary, Carrie, The Shining, Misery, The Stand. There's so many that...
Right. And the titles that you gave me, those are mostly serious horror flicks, and what King is mostly renowned for is serious horror. Like, there have been a good number of movies over the years that really demonstrate how dark and dramatic he can get with his writing. You know, you have works like Misery, you have Carrie, but when people usually talk about his filmography, they forget that he actually did make a very comedic and over-the-top horror extravaganza called Creepshow, which was released in 1982, and it was actually based off of the old 1950s horror comics, like the EC comics that they would publish back in the day. I read them like all the time when I was a kid because my father, he actually collected a lot of those old comics like Tales from the Crypt or The Horror Vault. I used to spend a lot of evenings like, you know, in my bed with all the lights off, and I would actually read those. And every now and then it would give me nightmares, but I just got really caught up in, you know, these horrific tales. Did you read any of those comic books? Are you familiar with them?
Actually did not know they had comic books for them and haven't really seen them.
Yeah, they were really big in the 50s. Tales from the Crypt, the TV series, adapted a lot of those stories, like from the original EC comics. But Stephen King, the filmmakers behind this, like Stephen King, director George Romero, who we know from Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, and Tom Savini, makeup artist who worked on a good number of 80s slasher films, like he did Friday the 13th, he did Day of the Dead. But this was pretty much a horror fan's wet dream because you had a collaboration of all these amazing horror artists, and they came together to make something fun. And honestly, like the tagline says, the most fun you'll ever have being scared. And for me, that's what Creepshow offers. Every time I watch this movie, I just have a total blast.
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo. And the creator of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead.
So watching it for the first time, did you feel like that giddy excitement? Like, oh man, this is actually a really fun, like, comic book horror movie.
It was actually, like, you know, just seeing a lot of Stephen King's, you know, his work that he's done, you'd think, oh, you know, you're going to jump into something very scary and, you know, going to make you jump. But this one definitely did a twist on some of Stephen King's work, and it was pretty fun and had some moments where it just made you laugh and just enjoy it.
It kind of felt like being on a carnival ride, or especially, it feels like you're on one of those haunted house rides where you move from room to room, and every now and then something might jump out at you, but you ultimately do feel safe the entire time because you know nothing dangerous is going to happen. And that's kind of the feeling you get while watching Creepshow because you have a fun time watching it. There might be some jolts, some scares, but it's just, it's a lot of fun.
You'll scream at ghastly ghouls. Cringe at at weird kids and shiver at the doings of evil doctors.
So, to kick things off, we have this opening sequence where a young boy played by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, who is now a famous author, he is being scolded by his parents for possessing a horror comic. And his dad, played by the great Tom Watkins, you know him from Night of the Creeps. He has the immortal line, "Thrill me."
Thrill me.
He plays the dad, and man, just in this opening scene alone, I mean, the dialogue is just so ridiculous and just so on the nose. Like, the dad is slapping his son on the cheek, being like, "I told you not to read this shit." Did that opening scene make you laugh?
It did. It had its moments where it just made me, it just couldn't help but just to burst out laughing. That's how it kind of was like a good setup to know what you're going to get into watching, what you're about to watch.
And the funny thing is that the father character scolds him for reading a horror comic, but of course this is written by Stephen King, and he is also scolding him for stealing some of his porno magazines. And Stephen King actually got his start writing short horror stories in porno magazines.
Oh, okay.
Some meta commentary there, some background trivia for you. So anyway, the rest of this opening scene, the father throws the comic book into the trash. You get your standard lightning effects, letting you know that okay, well this is obviously live action cartoon. And then he utters a line that is just so cringeworthy, but it just puts such a huge smile on my face because he goes back into the living room. He sits down in an armchair with like a glass of scotch or whiskey or something. And he's being yelled at by his wife, and he's just like, "Shut up, babe. This is why God's made fathers. That's why God made fathers, babe." Like, my God.
That's why God made fathers, babe. That's why God made fathers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Stephen King's dialogue over the years hasn't always been the most articulate. It can be a bit on the nose and, shall we say, ludicrous. And then Joe Hill, playing the young boy, he's sitting alone in his bedroom, and he has posters of classic horror titles like Dracula up on his wall. And then he smiles over at the window. We see this rotting skeleton just floating there.
And then he just gives him a smirk.
Not only a smirk, but he is literally he is grinning from ear to ear, just so...
Let's do this!
Just so happy to be seeing this terrifying corpse right outside his window. What kind of messed up kid is this?
It's Stephen King's kid.
Oh, yeah. He's been spending way too much time with his dad, obviously.
That's exactly what I said. And hanging with his dad too much.
And then we get a pretty amazing animated title sequence, and which leads us into the 5 stories of this movie. Each story is about 15 to 20 minutes long, except for one segment, which we'll get into. But we're going to talk about each of the segments and how we feel about them. We're going to go into the plots of each one, and hopefully by the end you'll have learned some things, because I'm about to drop some Creepshow trivia on you.
Creepshow will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
There's actually an interesting story behind each of these segments. The first with Father's Day, which is about, this hoity-toity rich family who has this very, this nihilistic aunt who's coming to visit them. And at the start, we see a character played by Ed Harris who is married into this family. He's being told the story about how this aunt essentially murdered her father like all those years ago because he was a vicious tyrant. And the interesting story behind this is that the actress who plays the aunt, in the scene where she's visiting her dead father's graveyard, his tombstone, the director actually told her to go off script. Like, he actually told her to improvise. So that scene where, she's crying at his tombstone, basically, letting her emotions out, those were actually coming from the actress. though that scene was actually not scripted. She was having memories of her own father, of her own troubled upbringing. So what you see in that scene is real and it's very effective.
Oh wow, that is really good because I mean, yeah, just the fact that she was able to bring that emotion out, you kind of just bought into it.
Mm-hmm. And kicking things off with Father's Day, what did you think of the first segment?
For the first one, I mean, it was okay. It did have its, its moments, but I don't know. I guess I wasn't feeling that one too.
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, she goes to visit her dead father. The dead father rises from the grave. He says over and over again that he wants his cake.
I think the reason I couldn't get into it so much was just because it's like, okay, like, he basically, gets rid of her in the beginning. So it's like, okay, now it's like, why are we going after these people?
I think he was pretty much just going after the rest of the family. I guess the idea is that he pretty much just hated his entire family, and now he's out for revenge against all of them. And plus, he really wanted his cake. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
The special cake at the end.
But yeah, with the rest of this first segment, it's pretty much a straightforward slasher. You get a hilarious bit where Ed Harris just reveals some amazing dance moves, and we described it as the kind of dance routine a really dorky dad would put on, trying to look cool in front of everyone. Because man, he just looks like a total doofus in this scene, and it is just ripe for parody. What I would love to do actually is I would love to do a reenactment of that scene where I just bust out some of my awesome dance moves and just tap into my inner Ed Harris, because man, that scene just cracks me up.
I wonder if that was off script too, and he was just going with what he knew.
Honestly, it probably was, because I can't imagine anyone writing those kind of dance moves on paper. Like they just seem so out of nowhere and just ridiculous.
They just threw them in front of the camera and said, "Just come up with your dance moves," and that's what he gave us.
Mm-hmm. But the rest of the first story pretty much is a straightforward slasher. Ed Harris goes to investigate the graveyard. He's looking for the aunt. He stumbles upon the open hole in the ground where the father's corpse had previously been in. He falls in, of course, right next to the aunt's recently dead corpse, and there was a bit that confused me when the cement block is like starting to topple over.
Yeah.
Did the corpse have psychic powers? Because he wasn't actually pushing the cement block.
No,
he was
in front of him the whole time, so I kind of was wondering that too.
Yeah, but anyway, so Ed Harris gets just crushed in that scene, and not emotionally. He just gets absolutely crushed. But then, I mean, the rest of the segment, I mean, he goes back to the mansion and he rips the head off of the other elderly aunt, and in the last shot of the movie, he basically has the aunt's head on this platter, and he finally has his cake. And now, I just have to say that while the first segment overall is pretty average, it does set the tone for like what's to come, because just the ending of this first segment where he comes out, he has the head on the platter, and then the lighting changes in the scene.
Yeah.
To really demonstrate that yes, this is a moving comic book, because there is literally like a red glow like on all of their faces, and even the background, there's like this cartoonish design like behind them, like in the background.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like when you can tell by the time the segment's over with, they basically turn into the comic book.
Mm-hmm. But like even this first segment, I mean, they really go to extreme lengths to make this appear like a living comic book, because like when the aunt is having flashbacks to when she murdered her father, they have these cartoonish like picture borders like around the scene, and honestly, like with this movie's comedic tone and just over-the-top nature, it really does work. It doesn't always work. Filmmakers have tried to do this in the past. Ang Lee tried to do it in the 2003 Hulk movie, where there would be like multiple panels for like a scene. And the difference is that movie was a depressing slog, but this movie it's a carnival ride, so it definitely works, that style.
Yeah, I agree.
So after that segment, we move on to the second one, which stars our man Stephen King. And let me just ask you a question: did Stephen King do an adequate job carrying this segment by himself, as an actor? Was he an effective comedic actor, is what I'm trying to ask.
Honestly, the kind of character he pulls off in this segment, I think, for somebody who just, basically writes his books and stuff like that, I thought he did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did pull off what he was trying to go for with that character, and then he did have you laughing at some parts.
I think the overall problem I have with Stephen King's segment is that, of course it's intentionally ridiculous. He's acting like Jerry Lewis on steroids. I even mentioned that he kind of looked like Bill Hader, especially with his long black hair. But here's the thing: if this was supposed to be more of like a Jerry Lewis, comedy sketch, I felt there should have been more slapstick humor, more physical comedy, but there really wasn't. It was mostly just Stephen King acting like an imbecile.
But I think we can agree that some of the dialogue wasn't the greatest either, though.
No, but man, so much of the dialogue in this segment is just pure gold, because my favorite line in the entire movie is when he first discovers the meteor in the ground, and after he cools it off with some water, he picks it up, some blue liquid just kind of falls out. He looks at the ground with these big bug eyes and just yells out, "Meteor shit!" It's just, oh my god, Stephen King just... Okay.
Meteor ship! Meteor ship! Meteor ship!
I will admit, there are some moments in this segment that do get a good chuckle out of me.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I just thought they could have gone a bit further with it. By the end, it was supposed to be a bit of a tragedy because he ultimately doesn't go to the doctors, which I know you had a complaint about. Why isn't he just going to the doctor?
Yeah, because the whole time he's sitting there he's getting ready to call the doctor, and then he has this little thought. If he goes to the doctors, they're gonna want to cut his arm off because he gets it on his hand, and then all of a sudden his hand's growing basically the grass out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, okay, no, we're not gonna call the doctor. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of the whole segment, he's already in this big old,
right,
bush, and it's he basically kills himself. It's okay, so you didn't want your hand chopped off, but you're willing to just commit suicide right now.
Yeah. Which, by the way, watching that scene in high definition, you can totally tell the suit that he's wearing, where he's supposed to be covered in all this moss and grass. It looks, it looks so fake, and it honestly reminded me of the bodysuit they had Jim Carrey wear in the Grinch,
and how the Grinch stole Christmas,
which was made out of dyed yak's hair. That's what it looked like. It did not look
Put
good.
a face on it, and he would have been the Grinch.
Stephen King playing the Grinch, that would definitely be a sight to see if they ever make another one. They made one with Benedict Cumberbatch in 2018. It was an animated version of the Grinch, but I want to see the Grinch starring Stephen King.
And a horror version.
The horror version of the Grinch. So basically take the charm out of Jim Carrey's performance and replace it with Stephen King. Keep the same movie with Ron Howard directing, and you can have a pretty effective horror tale.
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, but just overall, if this was supposed to be an homage to those cheesy 50s invasion movies like The Blob, the sight of grass growing isn't very enticing or exciting. It's just grass growing. So for me, it wasn't very effective as a horror short. It wasn't very effective as a comedy short. I just thought it kind of fell flat.
I'd say it's about average.
And then we get into the third segment, and Kim, you want to just give us a rundown of what this segment is all about?
Yeah, this next one, which is actually, after watching it, was actually one of my favorites out of the 5. But pretty much it's got, you have Ted Danson, I can't think of his name, the other guy.
Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen.
Hot off of the movie Airplane, where...
But yeah, so basically it starts off with Leslie Nielsen. He goes into Ted Danson's home, and he's talking about, wasn't it he's talking about his wife?
Yeah,
wife.
Yeah, Ted Danson is basically, bringing up the idea of divorce because Leslie Nielsen's wife has been cheating.
Yeah, cheating with Ted Danson's character, and then pretty much, he breaks down, telling him that, he's got his wife, well, not his wife, but his girlfriend at that point. But he said he's got her, trapped somewhere. But like he's saying, oh well, if you don't let go, I'm gonna kill you or something. Isn't it like that?
Yes.
And he's gonna kill him. He said, oh okay, if you basically kill me, then you're not gonna know where she's at. So overall, he takes him to this beach where he has a shovel already in the ground, and basically has him, or basically digs up a hole and has him bury himself. Sorry.
It's a very elaborate revenge plot because instead of just burying him alive, he buries him up to the neck where his head is still exposed.
And he's right next to the shore, so when...
And this is another thing too, like these are silly plots, but they really do a very good job of making you feel like you're reading like one of those classic 50s comic books. Because another thing too that we haven't mentioned is a lot of those old comic books were all about consequences, because they would feature these despicable characters who get what they deserve. You might have a rich man who has been cheating on his wife. His wife would come back as a zombie and ultimately kill him or bury him alive or something like that. And so that's the thing with Creepshow, is that everyone who gets their comeuppance starts off as unlikable and despicable.
Yeah.
And so that's where part of the fun comes in, because Leslie Nielsen is legitimately evil in this segment.
Yeah, from the very first time you see him, it's just you already hate him.
Yeah. And it's not like, and it's legitimate. I mean, you're watching Leslie Nielsen threaten to kill Ted Danson and his lover, and it just sends shivers down your spine. You're taking him very seriously as an antagonist. I mean, he's holding him at gunpoint. He's delivering his lines with this aura of menace. He delivers his lines very straight, and there's no nonsense about him. And so you definitely, perceive him as a credible threat.
Yeah.
Which was very impressive because Leslie Nielsen, obviously at the time, he had done Airplane. I don't think he had made the Naked Gun movies yet, but he was more established as a comedic actor at this time, even though he had started off in a lot of dramas. He was in the original Forbidden Planets. He was mostly known as a dramatic actor until the Zucker brothers got him involved in Airplane. Mm-hmm. But in Creepshow, you get to see some of that dramatic side. Anyway, so what happens after Ted Danson is buried in the sand?
So basically after that, you have, sorry, I forgot his name.
Leslie Nielsen.
I was calling him Lisa.
Just don't call him Shirley.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
So then after that point, he basically walks off, and you got Ted Danson's character basically buried. He's got to try and, fight to survive, hold his breath as long as he can when each wave comes in. Mm-hmm. And as this is happening, he's watching his lover, basically die in front of him.
And here's a bit of trivia for you. Leslie Nielsen did take the acting seriously, but between takes, he actually had a fart machine. Like, not even kidding, like he would actually go around and make fart noises like in front of the other crew members, because Leslie Nielsen, he was just getting into comedy at the time, so I think he wanted to flex his comedic chops in front of the other crew members. So I just picture like right before they roll the cameras on these dramatic scenes where Ted Danson is buried up to his neck, I just imagine Leslie Nielsen just cracking jokes and making all these fart noises.
Goes by his ear and you hear brrr.
Yeah.
I could not take that seriously if I was on set. I'd be laughing my butt off the whole time.
It'd be very difficult to act straight with that going on.
Yeah.
But at the end, of course, Ted Danson and his lover come back as water zombies. And another bit of Creepshow trivia, Ted Danson actually had his son on set when he had the zombie makeup on. And he was actually worried that he would traumatize his son for life because, he looked terrifying. Mm-hmm. But apparently what happened is that his son came up to him, looked up at him with a smile, and just said, "Oh, hi, Dad." Just not scared at all.
That's cool.
But yeah.
I like how they did that last scene when they come back, because it's like you were mentioning how when they're talking, you can hear like the gurgling of the water, and some of that was pretty cool how they did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cool. And just the ending of this segment where they bury Leslie Nielsen up to his neck. Which, by the way, okay, minutes earlier in this segment, we see Leslie Nielsen taking a shower, and he's not even getting his hair wet. Like, for some reason, he's standing so that the water is hitting mostly his chest, but he gets out of the shower and
he's completely dry.
He's completely dry, and his hair isn't wet at all. So I joked that the zombies were just making it so he finally got his hair clean.
You need to wash your hair, so we're gonna just bury you so you can.
But personally, that's my favorite segment out of all of them. I think Leslie Nielsen is magnificent. I thought he was a very effective antagonist. You know, I liked the clever twist of having Ted Danson and his lover come back as vengeful zombies. Mm-hmm. And then we get into the longest segment of Creepshow, which I will just say this. It was fun to see big names like Adrienne Barbeau and Hal Holbrook in this segment, because basically Hal Holbrook plays this kind of cowardly pushover of a husband. His nagging wife, played by Adrienne Barbeau, wife of John Carpenter, by the way, you know, is just constantly putting down his manhood, throwing insults his way, and so
very loud and obnoxious.
Very loud and obnoxious, always on the bottle. And Hal Holbrook has all of these visions of him killing his wife, which actually, the first one actually got you.
Oh,
I
yeah.
noticed.
Yeah, no, because I'm sitting there like, you know, she's sitting there nagging on him, and then all of a sudden you see him pull out the gun and shoot her right in the head, and it's like, as he's pulling out this gun, the people she's talking to in front of her, I'm sitting here going, why aren't they looking at him like, this guy's got a gun, he's about to shoot you? And then when he shoots her and stuff, you have all these people just sitting there clapping, like, oh my gosh, thank God, you know, you killed her. And then it's like...
Yeah, just, you know, every segment has nice comedic touches like that. You know, Hal Brooke is having these visions of killing his wife, and you know, it's a horrible thing to do, but at the same time you're laughing because you just feel so sorry for this poor man. And Adrienne Barbeau was totally game when acting in this movie, because man, she gets under your skin almost immediately.
You just want to shut up.
But the rest of the segment, so one of the professors at this college is calling to investigate this crate, which is discovered under this stairwell. This crate, which dates back to 1834. And you want to talk about some of the stupid things they do when opening up this crate?
First, they find this crate underneath the basement?
Yeah, it was under like the stairwell.
The stairwell.
Yeah.
They pulled this box out. It's like, okay, first of all, you're pulling out this box that has dust and got spider webs, and it's like, okay, so fine. They put it on the table, and then first of all, he's trying to pry this thing open. So, I mean, anything you're trying to pry open, obviously it is sealed shut for a reason, not to open it, but no, they go ahead and they open it anyways. And then all of a sudden the thing is just halfway open, and you see these eyes just looking right out at you. And then one guy...
The janitor,
you see these eyes looking right at you, instead of just running, he just goes, you know, I guess what, I'm just going to put my hand right into it, and then...
In the name of discovery, I am going to sacrifice my hand in the name of science.
And I just said, you know what, he got what he deserved.
Yeah,
Anybody who's stupid enough to put their hand in somewhere you just saw eyeballs looking at you.
He sees this glowing yellow pair of eyes in the darkness, and his first instinct is to reach inside
and just grab them.
And grab whatever it is. And I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but whenever something grisly or horrific happens, the lighting in a scene will change, where in this particular sequence where the janitor gets eaten alive, the whole room is just bright red.
Yeah.
It's like something out of an Italian horror flick, like something Dario Argento would do. Because, yeah, I mean, it's like you're reading a panel in a comic book, because, you know, you go from page to page, and when something scary happens, you know, the lighting and the mood would change, you know, from panel to panel. Mm-hmm. Which, I just have to say, I thought George Romero and the rest of the filmmakers on this project did do a very good job of bringing the comic book to life.
Yeah, I agree.
But the rest of the segments... The nervous professor runs out of the lab. He comes across this student
Yeah.
who was walking alone in the hallway.
Who's just screaming like nonsense at him, and this kid's just like, okay, he thinks that this guy's just off the rocker, basically, you know, like he's losing his mind. So they go back in the room where the janitor has already been basically, his arm's been eaten alive, and he's been already pulled into the box and devoured by this monster. And he discovers the blood on the floor, and then he just go. And then that's when he doesn't see. That's when the box isn't there because this monster had dragged the box back under the stairwell. And then they go back under the stairwell, and it's like, oh, you know, we see a whole bunch of blood. We even see a shoe that has blood on it. But we're gonna go back in and, you know, investigate.
Hey, listen, these are all very scholarly individuals. I think they are just curious. You know, even if it might mean their own deaths, their curiosity gets the better of them. So even though common sense should be telling them, hey, there is blood on the floor, maybe I shouldn't go near that goddamn crate, which is just covered in human blood. No, I'm gonna get a little bit closer and investigate.
Yeah, anybody who does that, just, you know, just take them.
So, nervous, sweaty professor runs away, you know, after seeing that man get devoured alive, and probably the goriest set piece of the entire film. Tom Savini did a very good job with the makeup effects. He is to be commended. I love that man's work. But anyway, nervous, sweaty professor goes to Hal Holbrook. You know, tells them what's up. Hal Holbrook gets the ingenious idea of putting sweaty, nervous professor to sleep, so that he can lure his wife, Agent Barbeau, to the college and ultimately feed her to this terrifying creature. Which is exactly what happens, and
which the most disgusting thing this woman does is mix milk and.
Oh my God! Yeah, she pours a glass of milk, and then she's reading a note that Hal Holbrook left behind for her. And as she's reading this note, she takes a bottle of booze and just pours it into this glass of milk.
I'm like, all right, she can go now too.
And there was actually another moment like that earlier in the film that we neglected to mention. It's when Stephen King, God, what does he do? He
Oh, it was the orange juice.
Yeah.
He was making himself a screwdriver, and he pours the orange juice in, then he pours the vodka in, and he takes the bottle and he's stirring the.
He stirs up the screwdriver with the bottle.
And you're like, okay.
I want to have my bartender do that the next time that he makes me a screwdriver. I expect something like that. I'll call it the Creepshow.
The Creepshow.
The final segment, however, is one that really gets under my skin. It just really makes my skin crawl. It really bugs me out.
It's pretty gross.
To get into the meat of this segment, I just have to say that if you have a phobia of creepy crawlies, especially cockroaches, I would avoid this segment at all costs because, man, this last segment is so nasty and disgusting that I still have trouble watching it to this day. I've seen this movie like 1,000,000 times. and you were telling me that you actually had like a similar experience with roaches, like in one of your apartments.
Yeah, it was it was an apartment that I lived in, and the neighbors that lived next to us, basically, they were infested with roaches because they didn't really live that clean.
Ugh.
So when they moved out, a lot of the roaches migrated into our apartment, which took almost forever to get them, out. Even they'd come up there and spray the apartment, and they would always they'd be gone for like a week, and then they'd come back, and it was horrible. And at that time, I was pregnant with my son, so it was like, oh God, I need to. Ugh.
So
I just hate roaches. They're disgusting.
So real life imitates art, and me personally, I just would burn the whole residence down. But you have this wealthy, racist germaphobe played by E.G. Marshall of 12 Angry Men fame. He lives in a very expensive apartment, which is essentially germ-free. However, it is being infested by all of these cockroaches. And I mentioned earlier that every segment has a fun behind-the-scenes story attached to it. Apparently, throughout the making of this movie, the crew was having a really good time. Because, making a movie like this, how could you not enjoy yourself? But when it came to the cockroaches, man, everyone was on edge and they were just getting grossed out, and they started taking filming a bit more seriously. Like, from what I understand, they really wanted to get the filming of this segment over with. And I can understand why.
Yeah.
I would not want to be trapped in a room with thousands of swarming cockroaches.
I definitely give that actor props because if I was on set with all that, I'd be ugh.
There is, however, a really good metaphor. There is a really good metaphor attached to this segment because we see E.G. Marshall as just this remorseless, despicable character who spits on everyone who is, poor and not wealthy. He talks to this grieving widow over the phone because apparently he had driven her husband to commit suicide. He's just laughing about it, saying that, well, the man was a fool, and he kind of, had it coming to him. And so the metaphor is that, you have this disgusting racist who's looking down on other people. He sees them as cockroaches. Mm-hmm. And what happens at the end? He gets what he deserves, and he's basically devoured by all these cockroaches. So there's a bit of symbolism there. Clever writing.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it from that angle, or you could just see it as a really disgusting 15-minute short where you see
cockroaches climbing everywhere.
Hundreds of cockroaches just pouring out of E.G. Marshall's dead body.
My only question is, this guy's a germaphobe, and he's over here squishing them.
Mm-hmm.
You would think if you're such a germ, you wouldn't even want to touch him.
Yeah, or
he was over slapping him. I'm like, oh.
Not just a germaphobe, but I mean a germaphobe to an extreme. But if a person with that kind of mindset, they probably wouldn't even eat anything in the apartment.
And this guy was over. Was he eating cereal?
He was eating cereal.
He's over here. I was like, no. Like, what are you doing? And then he goes in the kitchen and he sees these roaches just climbing out of the box of cereal, and you're like, oh my god.
Mm-hmm. No, it wouldn't happen. He would probably throw away all the food in his apartment.
I would have just left. I'd been like, I'm gonna just book it to the hotel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But those are the 5 segments, and then we get the epilogue where we're back with a little boy. He's purchased this voodoo doll, and he is essentially torturing his father because he's pricking the voodoo doll with these needles.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how the movie ends.
But then you have that one little dialogue with the trash.
Oh, one of the 2 trash guys. One of them played by Tom Savini, the makeup and special effects artist of this movie.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
So anyway, that was Creepshow. Kim, you enjoyed your first viewing of the movie then?
I did, actually. It was, like you said, it was pretty fun, and I enjoyed each segment. Favorited one more than the other, but it was overall a really good movie.
You need to know what to expect because, as we said, King is mostly known for serious horror, but with this movie, he expressed a more comedic side to him. And it ended up in a film that is just a huge joy to watch. I've seen it a million times. It's a really good movie to watch, like during the Halloween season too. Especially with people who have never seen it before. You can sit down. You can watch it all together. You can get some good laughs. You just have a good time while watching it.
Yeah.
It may not creep you out. It may not scare you, but you'll have fun all the same.
But if you go in with that mindset, it's an overall good movie.
Mm-hmm. Just avoid the 2 sequels, like Creepshow 2 and especially Creepshow 3. Those are to be avoided at all costs because, for one, George Romero didn't return to direct Creepshow 2. The director of Creepshow 2 was actually Michael Gornick, who was the director of photography for this movie. He helmed that one, and it's subpar, really. There's one good segment with like this oil monster at this lake that devours anything that touches it, but other than that, it's pretty below average. The third one you can just not even touch.
Don't even look at it.
But anyway, Guys, thank you so much for joining us in another episode of Round the Clock Frights. What we really enjoy doing is just giving you our honest thoughts on the horror genre because, this is something that we've been doing our entire lives. We love to sit down and just talk about horror movies that we have seen. We discuss the pros and cons, so we really enjoy making these videos. We have a lot more content coming for you soon. October is going to be an incredibly exciting month. We have some awesome new releases. We have Robert Pattinson and The Lighthouse. Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, so it's like Batman and the Green Goblin.
I am looking forward to seeing that because seeing Robert Pattinson in the Twilight movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was a Twilight fan.
Yes. So I would definitely like to see how he expands his role from there to this movie.
We also have Zombieland Double Tap.
Mm-hmm. Every
lead in that movie is now an Academy Award nominee, which was joked about in the trailer. So October is going to be very awesome. I'm looking forward to it. If you like this, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, Round the Clock Frights. Mm-hmm. And we're excited to be back soon. And as always, have an awesome night, all you boils and ghouls. And take care.
Bye.
Watch out for the floating skeletons outside your window. That's why God made fathers, babe. That's why God made fathers.
You see that crap? All that horror crap? Things coming out of crates and eating people? Dead people coming back to life? People turning into weeds, for Christ's sake?
Well, yes, I did, but
Well, you want them reading that stuff?
Well, no, but...
All right, then. I took care of it.